And you're going to get a call from your lender that's like, hey, Scott, I got a friend that's interested in doing this. Do you by any chance need more lenders? And that's how I get all my lenders. They're coming from my other lenders they're asking me if I can use more lenders. And so it changes the whole dynamic of me sitting out there, oh, someone please loan me money, right? They're calling me.
Scott, thank you for joining me for our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host, Matt Camp, head of partnerships over here at DealMachine. And on these, we really like to shine a spotlight on industry experts like yourself, hear your inspiring stories, and educate our audience on the lessons you've learned and how you see the world evolving. So today, really excited to welcome on Scott Jelinek. You've been a real estate investor for over 30 years. I know you've mentioned that you've always been interested in entrepreneurship. Started your first business when you were 15. You went into real estate after serving in the Army. So thank you for your service. And you've done over 800 deals rather, which now you have, is it 158 houses?
178 right now.
Wow. Yeah. Can't even keep up, man. There we go. You got to update the online info. That's amazing. So, and then I know you also teach others how to do that too, with events, seminars, classes, all that stuff. So welcome on, Scott.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah. So maybe to kind of begin with, can you start off a little bit more about how you got into real estate? You doing that first deal, kind of take us through that journey as a newbie. Because I know our audience always loves that.
Well, we're going back to 1994, so it's too long of a story to actually share. But I can tell you about my first house, though. And for those who were old enough, back then they had a thing, this is 1994, called non-qualifying assumptions. And they did away with them in 1987 for FHA and 1989 for VA. But it meant it was almost like a sub-2, except with the bank's blessing. Anyone can take over the mortgage as long as the seller and yourself had an agreement. You paid them out their equity and you can take it over. Well, I mowed lawns at the time, and I was renting a townhouse in Virginia Beach, and my brother got a flyer, and the flyer said, non-qualifying assumption. And I didn't know what the hell it meant, but I called the agent and she told me it was $5,000 down, no credit check, no job, no pulse, no anything. And so I went over to look at it, kind of knowing I wanted it. I really had no interest in real estate. I just figured better to own than to rent, right? And so I closed on that property and I moved into it. And about 2 or 3 weeks after I moved into it, another house on the block came up for sale. And townhouses are relatively all the same, right? And it had a white sign out front with magic marker, and it said $2,000 takeover payments. And I was pissed because I paid $5,000 for mine, and this one was $2,000. And mind you, I already closed on mine. I'm living in it, so there's nothing I can do. But my genius brain said, well, let me buy that one also and cost average them out, right? And so I bought the second one, and I rented it for basically the same as my payment. It was about $675 back then. Now it's about $1,700, but back then it was about $675 a month. And my mortgage was about $675 a month, which was not a smart business plan. But every single month, my tenant would pay me, I would pay the mortgage, and it kept knocking in my head that I borrowed this money and they're paying it off. I borrowed it, they're paying it off. And that slowly made me become obsessed with how many can I buy and have someone else pay them off. And that's what I've been doing ever since 1994.
Wow. Yeah, so I know I love to hear how that clicks, and it's cool to see you jumping into that journey. I know a lot of people watching right now, they're trying to get over that hump, doing their first deal. Since then you've obviously been through quite a few market cycles. You've been seen a lot. You've been navigating the waters like this in fast times, slow times, and everything in between. So can you maybe tell us through the last housing crash, some lessons you took from that, how it affects what you do today? We're always feeling like we're holding our breath. So,
right.
Understanding how you're approaching it, I think would really benefit people as well.
Well, so the way I do business and the way I approach it is very controversial, especially to people who started at 2009 or later. Especially most of the people you talk to will argue with me to the death. And then when I say, what year did you start? And they're like, oh, 2012, 11. And nothing wrong with that, but there's a reason why I think differently. So I'm gonna try and shorten things because I know we only have 30 minutes here. So about 2001, I got to about 20 properties buying the way I was buying, right? Non-qualifying assumptions, keeping them as rentals. And that is when I finally started going to courses, going to seminars, reading books, and I was obsessed with real estate investing. And everybody taught and still teaches that I was doing everything wrong. They were like, you have all this equity. Prices started going up in 2001, right? And they're like, you have all this equity and it's dead equity and it's just sitting there. It's not making you a return. And I need to, this is what they all told me, pull that equity out and buy more houses. And I did. And I got to 84 houses until 2007. And I always tell, everybody always says it was 2008. And I'm like, I assure you it was 2007 because I have my QuickBooks to prove it. Well, about 2007, about midway through 2007, the real estate market stopped on its tracks. The banks started going out of business. People were losing their jobs. Nobody was paying. Overnight, I had 84 properties. I also had 84 mortgages. And overnight, I had 35, 40% stop paying. And it wasn't that they were bad or needed to be screened better. They lost their jobs. And in the world, I don't know if you remember the bust, and it was a rough time. And I had a lot of money at the time too. I had almost $1 million in cash. I felt like I could fight the good fight, work on turning them over, but they weren't filling. Houses were getting foreclosed left and right. And I was buying houses for a fraction of what I had sold them for, the same houses. And then eventually I ran out of money and I lost 55 of my houses to foreclosure. And this is really hard on anyone. I always say that. And losing your house to foreclosure is hard on anyone, but I felt like it was especially hard on me because I was the stop foreclosure guy. I had an Escalade wrapped in stop foreclosure, and meanwhile I had houses in foreclosure and I lost them. And most of my competitors, my friends, people in real estate at the time, when the market became, rubble, went back to their previous lives. They went back to their jobs, went back to being a school teacher, went back to IBM, whatever they were doing before. But I had nothing I could do before. I mowed lawns before, and now I'm living this lavish lifestyle. I said, there is no fallback. So I'm trying to find out what can I still do? And one of the things I noticed was some people were still crushing it. In 2008, 2009, some people were still crushing it. Most people got crushed. Some people were still crushing it. So I started paying attention to what were they doing different, right? And I took people to lunch. A lot of them were the older guys. They were my hard money lenders, people I knew, but we weren't good friends, but I would go to lunch and I would ask a lot of questions. And one of the things that I found across the board, 100%, which is the controversial thing, because everybody wants to argue it to the death, is they all owned everything free and clear. Everything, their rentals, their cars, their house. And I was like, I would have argued myself. 2005, Scott would have argued how stupid they were, right? And so, but it dawned on me, I said, that's why they're buying now. Everyone else is crushed and their houses are selling, $200,000 houses are selling for 30 grand. The bank's selling the REOs and they're buying and they're crushing it because they had no debt. They had this cash. And so we were in an interesting time where mind you, my credit shot. I just lost 55 of my houses. I spent all my money, so I can't pay cash for anything. But yet the prices were the best they've ever been. I mean, literally houses that I personally sold for $199, I bought again for $30,000. The same house. Wow. So everybody talks about, they went down 15%. I'm like, yeah, bull. That's what the statistics tell you. I said, I know specific houses I sold for $199 and I bought that same house again, not one like it, that house for 30 grand. The challenge was I couldn't get any loans. I was dead to the banks and I didn't have any money left. And so that is where I kind of came up with the plan, which is what we call the slow flip now, where I had to borrow, but I couldn't use hard money because hard money requires you to resell it. You generally have about 6 months. And I wanted to keep these. So I came up with this plan with private money and amortizing them, fully amortized on 5-year plans. But then rather than dealing with rentals, because I had my share of rental headaches, I sold them immediately on 30-year mortgages for full retail, or what I call super retail, because I didn't have to fix them up. I didn't have to pay agents. I didn't have to do any of that. There was no appraisals, no inspections. So I would buy these houses on 5-year mortgages and sell them immediately, same day, on 30-year mortgages. Only I'm buying them for 30 and I was selling them at 89. And I would, it was and I've done it. I've been doing it ever since then. So I started that program in 2011 and it's been tweaked and refined since then, but It kills it. And I have 178 of them now, but we are just a bank. We're not a landlord anymore. No, we're not really a bank, but we're a finance company. All we do is collect payments. We don't answer, calls for a plumbing leak. We don't have to deal with mowing grass or, any of that stuff. We are just a finance company, more or less. We just process payments.
Wow. That's quite a journey, man.
That was a long to a short question.
No, I like to hear your mentality of how you, I think in the end, like you approached it from a problem solving perspective, saying like, hey, I've got no other options. I need to figure this out. You're going out and you're doing your due diligence. You're putting the work in, but you're really asking good questions. So I love to hear how, even just having that mindset going through such a hard time is encouraging to hear for anybody.
It's ironic that I had no fallback plan. And now today I look at that as a blessing. Mm-hmm. Back then it was a curse because I'm like, well, what else can I do? I have this house and cars and all this stuff
to go through.
And I'm like, what am I going to do? In hindsight, I feel like it was a blessing because if I had a plan, a fallback, I would have taken it. If I was able to go back to my job and still be able to support myself, I would have probably done it. And who knows where I'd be today. And but instead I had no choice. And then everything worked out the way it was meant to work out.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Well, so for the slow flip concept, I know that's something that you do a phenomenal job teaching at your events, and you've got. I know you do online as well. You said
Now we're primarily online. So for
Yeah.
years I was doing everything local, and I was missing the mark on there's so much demand, and I was only able to serve a small community. And so now I've started doing an online program, and to say it's doing well would be the understatement of the century, because it's doing way better than I even planned for it to do, because they are killing it. They are doing, my number one guy has 115 houses already. And all he's focused on is, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to beat you. And he is. I tell him every time, I said, you will, because I still buy. I contracted one today, but I buy whatever comes across. I'm not looking for them anymore. I'm not, if I get a lead, yes, I still buy. I buy, every week or two, I'm still buying something else, but I'm not like he's on it every day. And I'm like, he'll beat me probably within a year, but I don't care. It's not a competition for me. I get more value. I get more, I don't pride or happiness out of their success than I do my own anyway. I said, I want him to be, I want everybody to beat me.
Yeah. So with those folks, I mean, obviously, you can't give us the full, crash course in a 20-minute, 30-minute conversation, but could you maybe go through and give us some of those highlights of how to execute on a slow flip like that? And then maybe even talk about like the people who are crushing it, what sets them apart? Like how are they, doing so well?
Perfect. So the way the model works and the reason it exists. So first I want to tell you, you probably have people all over the country listening, right? And you're going to have some people who are saying, he's out of his mind, $30,000. Houses don't exist for $30,000. And I get that all the time. And I always say, well, before you argue with me, just spend 5 minutes on Google, right? You can go right into Zillow and pick a state, and generally the Midwest states. And you can pick Illinois or Missouri or Kentucky or Indiana. Right. And you just type in houses under 50,000 and you will see hundreds of them. And you will be shocked that some of them are 15,000 and 17,000, and they are nice looking ranches. So anyway, so there's a hole in the marketplace, and that's the hole we fill. The hole is the sellers of these houses need cash to sell, right? The buyers of these houses need financing to buy. The banks won't finance them. They won't finance them for two reasons. One is they won't finance a house. Generally, a bank won't finance a house unless it's in perfect condition. And number two is most banks won't finance under $50,000. And so the seller is kind of stuck where I got this house, but the only buyer I can get has to pay me cash. And yet the buyers who want them need the financing. That's where we come in. We get right in the middle. And so the skill is raising private money, which is one of the big things I teach. So you have to raise private money, and we pay the seller the cash with private money. We do them on 5-year mortgages, and then we offer the buyer the financing on a 30-year mortgage. And obviously, we're buying it at a discount. We sell it what I call super retail. And so the buyers are thrilled, the seller's thrilled, my lender's thrilled because we pay 12% interest. Everybody wins. And we just don't make money. This is why it's a slow flip. We don't make money on our slow flips typically for 5 years. It's a 5-year mortgage. And so there's a little spread, plus we get a down payment, $3,000 to $5,000. But I always tell my people in my group, I'm like, listen, that's not your money yet. People hate when I say this, but I always say you don't deserve to make $1 off your properties till they're free and clear. Until then, it's not yours, right? Lessons learned the hard way. And so I say that money stays in the account. And now if you have a defaulted tenant, or if you have an eviction, or if you have somebody that moves out, you don't have to come out of pocket to pay this payment, until if it takes you a month or 2 or 3 to get your new buyer in there. You have $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 in there. And so that's the way I teach them to keep it as a stress-free thing. It takes 5 years though. But if I say, if you stick it out for 5 years, you're going to be thankful that you did it now. Mm-hmm. There's a saying, and I love, and I always repeat, is that if you do what's easy, life will be hard. And if you do what's hard, life will be easy. And I talk about it all the time because slow flips are hard in the sense that we don't get paid for 5 years. And most people are like, no, but I want to get paid next month. I said, you can do that, but you're going to be having this conversation for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Or you can tough it out right now for 5 years and be free for the rest of your life. And so that's kind of where my head's at with slow flips. I'm always, I end every meeting with telling them, do something today that your future self will thank you for. And that's slow flips. Yes, you're not getting anything today, but in 5 years, you're going to be glad that 2023, Scott did this deal now, because 2028, Scott's going to get the benefit.
Yep. And the people, so the ones that are crushing it, is there, what do you think separates them? Is it the way they're raising money, or just curious?
Raising money, and also, being aggressive. I teach my people to do one at a time, right? I say you buy one when it's filled and producing. Now you buy your second, because I don't want people to have 2 or 3 or 4 that are vacant waiting to be filled, and now you got to service that payment. So I teach them to do one at a time. But my guys that are crushing it, because we also wholesale, we wholesale and we do slow flips. Wholesale's for money right now and slow flips for your future. So they're slow flipping, and as they're accumulating cash and they have 30, 40, 80, $100,000 in cash sitting, they don't use the cash to pay cash for the next slow flip. But what it does is now it empowers them to not have the fear. Okay, I can buy 5, and if they're vacant for a month, I'm okay with it because I have the backup money. And so that's one of the big things. As they have more reserves, the more empowered they are to buy more quicker, and just go at it rather than do the way I teach, which is one at a time, because I'm a big fan of freedom and low stress. And so I don't want people to get in over their head and then all of a sudden have to come up with a payment.
Yep. So what are, in terms of the common error, the common mistakes you see there? Is it, that's one, it sounds like, is getting ahead of yourself and, having too many go at once, but are there any other kind of common pitfalls that you really are helping people get through?
Yeah. So one huge mistake is confusing cheap for a good deal. So that's a big mistake, because we always teach 30,000. Some people buy them at 20, 15, 25. And occasionally you'll find houses, and you might not even believe this, for $5,000, $6,000, right? But there's a point though where there's some houses that even for free I won't take them, because I'm like, yeah, it might only be $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000. I said, but it's a shell, and it's in a neighborhood that even after you renovate it and make it livable, which will cost you $50,000, it's not going to be worth $50,000 when it's done. It's worthless, in my opinion. It's less than worthless, because you buy it and you get a tax bill. So I've seen people make that mistake where they just get so excited for something being cheap, but that doesn't mean it's a deal. One of my rules, and one of the rules we teach, is that the house needs to be livable. It doesn't have to be immaculate, but we're not buying walls down to the studs and no floor, and we're not buying shells of houses. The house has to be livable, not retail ready, but livable. Somebody can live in it while they renovate it, even though the bulk of our customers are actually landlords. We sell to a lot of Section 8 landlords and conventional landlords, but it has to be livable, and that's a big mistake people make. The second mistake, since you asked, is not vetting the areas, because certain states, as you know, are not landlord friendly, right? So there's states, and I'll give you for instance, upstate New York. You can buy houses all day long in upstate New York for $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 that bring in a good $900,000 a month. So the numbers work for a slow flip, but the laws don't work for a slow flip, because you can do an eviction in New York and it could take you a year or more to get the person out. And so even though there are deals there, we won't mess with it. We only will buy in states that we know are landlord friendly, and you go through a regular process if in fact somebody defaults, not one that holds you hostage.
Yep. One thing that's interesting, and you touched on this, as we got into this, the raising private money piece. I know that sounds like a pretty key element to this. Can you maybe walk us through, how you go about that process, what the pitch looks like, how to really get better at that? And then obviously that's another entire part of what you do, but if you can,
we have a national lender now in our program that's funding slow flips on my program on 5-year money, 12% interest, which is phenomenal. That's a recent thing, and we'll see how they do. Right now, they're funding about 50 deals a month, and I'm hoping that maintains, because they're doing fantastic. But the way I teach, and I'll give you a little insight as to private money, the way we raise is, let me clarify first on what I mean by private money. Private money to me is not lenders who are private money lenders. People say, I'm a private lender. I'm like, well, that's not a private lending to me. Private lending to me is a guy who has nothing to do with the industry, nothing to do with real estate, just has money and would rather make a 12% return than a 2 or 3 that he's getting in his bank. That's a lender. I cultivate him to be my lender, right? He's not in the business, because people in the business set their own rules. They're like, oh no, I loan at 5 points, 15, or whatever their deal is, or this is their terms. We want it to be our rules. We want it to be our program, right? So I'll tell you the way I raise. And I teach, and it happened by accident when I went back to how I found my first lender, and I thought about it. I'm like, it's interesting the way it worked out, and now it's the way I teach. So for one is, what's the number one reason people don't raise private money is because they fear rejection. When I talk to them about this, the first thing they say is, well, I didn't ask because I know they don't have any money. Nobody I know has any money, and so I didn't bother asking, right? And they fear rejection, no different than if you were young and single picking up a girl in a bar. People say, well, how come you didn't pick her up? Well, I didn't talk to her because she was going to say no anyway, right? It's the same thing. So the way we raise private money is, for one, you start with friends and family, even though you may think, I don't know anybody that has money. And they very well might not have any money. It doesn't matter. We start with friends and family, and we don't ask. That's the number one thing, is we never ask, because if you ask, someone can say no, right? So we eliminate the asking. Instead of asking, we offer an opportunity. We offer an opportunity where you can make 12% return on your money backed by real estate, right? But here's where the kicker comes in. We don't offer it to you. So rather than say, would you like to, because then they can say no, we say, do you by any chance know anybody who might be interested in making a 12% return on their money backed by real estate? I'm doing this program. You can start talking about it. But they can either say, no, I don't know anybody, but they can't tell you no, that I won't lend you money because we're not asking them. And so the way it typically works is one of two ways. Either A, they say, no, maybe this one guy I talked to, or whatever, and they can set you up with him. Or B, which is the more often than not, is they'll say, well, I might be interested in that. Tell me about it. And I'll always play it all the way off. And I'll be like, no, not you. You're doing a bunch of other stuff. You're in that crypto thing, or you're doing this. But I know you know people. So if you know somebody who'd want to make 12%, it's secured by a house for at 12% interest. And I maintain my power position by not you, until they're like, no, tell me, I might want to do it. And then I'll say, okay, well, this is the way it works. We borrow $30,000 at 12% for 60 months. So we're setting the terms, not how much interest do you want? How long would you do it for? There's no question. This is our program. Even if you're brand new and you've never bought one, you have to present your program, and then they can fall into your program. Otherwise, you're going to agree to anything just to get a deal done, and it's going to fail because you won't be able to afford whatever it is they're charging.
Love it. Yeah. And would you say, in terms of how to find those people, do you literally start with just friends and family like that? Or?
Friends and family, that's not where it's going to come from. But the only thing, this is the thing that's most interesting, is most people think, I need 100 different lenders, right? Or I need 50 lenders. The reality is, and this is what I tell people, and the ones who are doing it, they're always like, Scott, you were so right. You were so right. You were so right. You need one. And when I say you need one, it doesn't mean that lender can fund all your deals, because they can't. That lender might only have 30 grand or 300 grand or whatever the dollar amount is. But every single lender you get is going to stem from that one, period. People know people who are like themselves, right? So somebody that has 300 grand that wants to make a better return, they're going to be your lender, and they're going to do 10 deals. When they're at a party and their friends talking about whatever, and they're talking about, hey, I'm making 12% and I get a check on the first of every month, and they're going to be like, oh, tell me more about that. Well, yeah, I've been doing it for 6 months now, or 6 years, or whatever it is. I've had my same lender since 2011. And then he's going to be like, hey, do you think he needs any more lenders? And you're going to get a call from your lender that's like, hey, Scott, I got a friend that's interested in doing this. Do you by any chance need more lenders? And that's how I get all my lenders. They're coming from my other lenders, they're asking me if I can use more lenders. And so it changes the whole dynamic of me sitting out there, oh, someone please loan me money, right? They're calling me, and I raise for people in my group. And so they're calling me saying, can you use more money? And it's a whole dynamic shift and your thought process of being like, oh, I have to ask somebody to loan me money, because nobody wants to be in that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Love it, man. I mean, I think in general, you're great at, being able to bring that inbound interest, and be able to, when people do that, obviously, like, barriers are down, and it's less, it's a win-win, less intimidating for the newbie as well.
If someone's pitching you, you're already planning 6 ways to say no. Right. As soon as someone's pitching you on anything, literally as they're speaking, I'm thinking of, how am I getting out of this? How am I going to say no? So it has to be where I am not pitching you. I do not want anything from you, but do you by any chance know anybody who might be interested? And now you get a chance to tell them the whole thing without them telling you no. And then if they are interested, they'll ask. And if not, maybe they can refer you to somebody who might be interested.
Yep, absolutely. This has been awesome. I do want to make sure to ask before we get off on this too, the whole Freedom Accelerator strategy. I know that's something that you'll talk about too. Can you maybe define that a little bit and talk about, like, why that's so powerful?
Well, so my online program, and I don't like anyone to start at my online program. I always want them to start at my book. So we'll talk about that in a second. But my online program, what our focus is different than most, is that I'm not focused on Lamborghinis and yachts and making you a bazillionaire, right? What I am focused on, and what our strategy is to set you free in the next 5 to 7 years. And it attracts a specific person. And I'll tell you why, because most people that are in the industry, or they're looking for another way, or they're buying courses and taking coaching, or whatever they're doing, they're looking to do something massive right now, right? They want to buy that Lamborghini, or whatever it is that they see with their mentor has. The reality is, though, the people that resonate with me are people they've already been working for 20, 30, 40 years and have nothing. And they're like, I'm willing to put in 5 years to be free. They're not looking for the Lamborghini. They're looking for the $10,000 a month, or $20,000 a month, or whatever their freedom number is. And we do an exercise to come up with, and they're looking for that number. And I make it basically as simple as possible, where anybody can set themselves free in the next 5 to 7 years. And so you can do all these maybe work that might work, it might not, or you can do I love wholesale. I still wholesale. You can make 30 grand this month, but you might make nothing next month, or you might make it again, but you got to keep doing it every month. Slow flips, you do them once and they compound upon themselves. And then in 5 years, you just get the money. I have 178 of them now. So you can do the math. I mean, it's astronomical how much things turned once we got to the 60th month and you start paying stuff off.
Mm-hmm.
I have 24. This is, what are we in, October, December? So I have 2 payments left. I have a package of 24 I bought that I got 2 payments left. And then I have another 24 free and clear. I think I have 72 right now free and clear. I have another 24 coming in December. So it's exciting. I love getting to the 5-year mark.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, so you've got the book. Tell me every way that people can get connected with you and get involved with you.
The best way, and this is, I try and always tell people the only way, because I'd rather them start there, is I wrote a book called The Art of the Slow Flip. And the best way is to get a copy of that. And I'll give you a link so you can get a free copy. If you just go to slowflip.com, 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 just pay the shipping and handling. And I outlined in this book, I literally outlined step by step, how do we fill them? What do we say about that we didn't clean them up? I mean, I outlined everything and I held nothing back. The reason I like people to start with the book is because not everybody resonates with what we do. A lot of people are on the different mindset where they want to have Lamborghinis and yachts and all this. And mind you, you can get there with slow flips, but it's a different program. Mm-hmm. The people that I really think that read this and all of a sudden they're slow flippers, right? They're like, I don't know how or when, but I need to do this. Those are the ones that have already realized what they need is time with their kids. They need freedom. They need to be able to wake up and do whatever they want to do. And those are the people, those are my people. And I always say, I said, if you read this book, you'll know by the end of the book if this is something that attracts you or something that repels you. And the people it attracts, people, I'll tell you who it repels. It repels people who love their houses. And I used to be that way. I always reference this guy as 2005 Scott. It repels people who put up their special light fixture and paint the door a special color and they love their house and want to hug it, because these technically aren't our houses anymore. So there is no pride of ownership for us. There's pride of ownership for somebody else. We're just collecting a payment. Mm-hmm. So it repels those people, and it repels all the people that have been brainwashed by society, by every other freaking guru out there talking about how great debt is. And debt is great until it's not. And so people who have already created that in their mind about how great debt is, they can't wrap their head around being debt free because they're like, oh, it's so stupid. And I'm like, well, tell that to the $100,000 a month we bring in. That's ours. I mean, it's a mindset shift. And so those people, sometimes they'll be repelled. If you're in love with debt, you'll be repelled. And if you love your houses and afraid if someone buys them, you'll lose them. I'm like, well, yeah, you'll lose them. And now you go buy 3 more with that money. But those are the 2 people that it does not resonate with. And for everyone else that really is searching for freedom above all else, once they read the book, I literally get an email or a call or a text, and they're like, how do I do this? How do I do this? I want in. And so that's why I always say, start with the book, and it's going to give you every question will be answered, and a step-by-step on how to get started.
Yeah. Well, I want to appreciate you giving that away to our audience like that. I'll make sure we link to that below. Scott, I appreciate your perspective. Thank you for coming on. This was awesome, man. I'll make sure that we, again, link to that below. We'll link to our other free resources below. But Scott, I want to just thank you for your time as well.
Well, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to seeing you, and I know we're going to see you real soon at our live event.
Yeah, I said we'll be there in January. So, see you then.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks again, Scott. I really enjoyed the conversation. To everybody watching, this is Matt Camp with DealMachine, and happy deal finding.